blood on the doorstep, a pacemaker ripped out and left on the floor. 84 years old and gone without a trace in the dead of night. Before you hear another word, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. Share this with everyone you know. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. This case needs eyes on it. Every single one of you could be the person who helps bring her home. This is the mother of one of America's most recognizable journalists. Vanished from her own home while cameras were destroyed and the clock was ticking. 13 days into the investigation and no arrests. No body. No answers. Just a masked figure caught on camera. A family begging for mercy. And a kidnapper who might be watching right now. This is Dark Pulse. And this is happening right now. February 1st, 2026. Tucson, Arizona. When the sun came up that Saturday morning, Nancy Ellen Guthrie was already gone. Her daughter, NBC Today Show co-anchor Savannah Guthrie, would soon step away from the cameras she's worked behind for decades to make the most desperate plea of her life. The FBI would deploy hundreds of agents. The President of the United States would personally intervene. A $100,000 reward would be posted. And still nothing. Because whoever took Nancy Guthrie knew exactly what they were doing. And they left behind just enough evidence to taunt investigators while staying completely invisible. This is not a solved case. This is happening right now. This is the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. And someone watching this knows exactly where she is. Let me tell you what we know for certain. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. Born January 27, 1942 in Fort Wright, Kentucky. Widow since 1988 when her husband Charles died of a heart attack at 49 during a mining trip in Mexico. She raised 3 children alone. Annie, Savannah, Cameron. Worked in public relations at the University of Arizona for 17 years. Active in her church. Sharp as a tack according to everyone who knew her. No dementia. No confusion. But she had a pacemaker. Chronic heart conditions. Daily medication she cannot survive without. Limited mobility. She could walk maybe 50 yards on her own. No more. She lived alone in a burnt adobe home in the Catalina foothills. An unincorporated area north of Tucson near East Skyline Drive and North Campbell Avenue. Pima County jurisdiction, not Tucson police. That distinction matters. Saturday night, January 31st, 2026. Nancy takes an Uber at 5:32 p.m. to her daughter Annie's house for dinner. Annie is married to Tommaso Cyan, Italian-born, 50 years old, 6th grade and AP biology teacher at Basis Oro Valley School. They live about 10 minutes from Nancy's home. Dinner happens. The evening is uneventful. Then at approximately 9:48 p.m., Tommaso drives Nancy home. Her garage door opens at 9:48. Closes at 9:50. Tommaso leaves. Nancy is alone. That's the last time anyone who loved her saw her alive. Here's the timeline. Every second confirmed by digital forensics and law enforcement. 1:47 a.m. February 1st. Nancy's Google Nest doorbell camera disconnects. Not a technical glitch. Physically disconnected. Someone ripped it down. 2:12 a.m. The camera software detects a person even though it's offline. The residual systems are still sensing movement. 2:28 a.m. Nancy's pacemaker app disconnects from her phone. That's the outer edge of the window. She's either unconscious, restrained, or already gone. 11:56 a.m. Family members arrive because Nancy missed a virtual church service with a friend that morning. They walk in. Her phone is there. Her wallet. Her medications. Her car. Everything except Nancy. 12:03 p.m. 911 is called. Within hours, Pima County Sheriff's Department deputies are on scene. Within a day, this goes from missing person to criminal investigation. By February 2nd, Sheriff Chris Nanos is telling reporters something that makes everyone's blood run cold. Nancy did not leave voluntarily. She could not have walked far on her own. This is a crime scene. Blood. Nancy's blood. Confirmed by DNA testing. On the front porch. A trail leading from inside the house toward the back door. Not a massive amount. Not the kind you'd see in a violent murder. But enough to indicate injury. Enough to indicate struggle. The pacemaker disconnected. Not surgically removed. Forcibly detached. Left behind in the home like it meant nothing. But to Nancy, it meant everything. Without it, her heart is at risk. Without her daily medication, she could die. Whoever did this knew that. The doorbell camera destroyed. Ripped off the wall. But whoever tore it down didn't know that Google Nest systems retain residual data even without an active cloud subscription. The FBI's digital forensics team, working directly with Google engineers, spent days extracting back-end data from systems the suspect thought were dead. And they got something. Surveillance footage from inside the home. Not usable, because those cameras were smashed too. But fragments. Timestamps. Proof of exactly when the intrusion happened. No forced entry at the doors. No broken windows. Whoever came in either had a key or Nancy opened the door. Think about that. 84 years old. Alone in the middle of the night. And she opened the door. That tells you she knew this person. Or she was already incapacitated before they entered. Nancy's dog didn't bark. An elderly woman's companion animal. Protective. Alert. And it stayed silent. Why? Two possibilities. The dog knew the intruder. Or the intruder knew how to keep the dog quiet. This was not random. This was not some stranger who broke in off the street. This was someone who knew Nancy. Knew her home. Knew her routine. Knew her vulnerabilities. Knew where the cameras were. Knew she had a pacemaker. And they planned this. On February 10th, the FBI released the footage that changed everything. Black and white. Grainy. Nighttime. A figure approaches Nancy's front door. Masked. Gloved. Carrying a backpack. Armed. You can see a holstered firearm. The person is deliberate. Methodical. They reach up toward the camera. Try to cover it with one hand. When that doesn't work, they rip out a plant from a nearby planter and shove it in front of the lens. Then they tear the camera off the wall. This isn't panic. This is someone who came prepared. The FBI's Video Forensic Analysis Unit studied this footage frame by frame. They set up a blackout tent at Nancy's home. Recreated the exact nighttime lighting conditions. Tested camera angles with replica clothing. On February 12th, they released a suspect description. Male approximately 5'9" to 5'10". Average build. Wearing a black ski mask. Vinyl gloves. And a black 25-liter Ozark Trail Hiker pack. That's a Walmart exclusive brand. Cheap. Available everywhere. Impossible to trace. The backpack detail is critical because witnesses reported seeing a figure in a gray hoodie and jeans carrying two backpacks about 4 miles from Nancy's home at 1:52 a.m. same night. Could be the same person. Could be unrelated. Additional evidence. Black gloves recovered about 1.5 miles from the home. Sent to the lab for DNA analysis. Results not public yet. Investigators also asked neighbors for footage from two very specific time periods. January 11th, 9 p.m. to midnight. And January 31st, 9:30 to 11 a.m. Why those dates? Because they believe the suspect was watching Nancy. Casing the house. Planning the abduction weeks in advance. That January 11th request suggests pre-surveillance 3 weeks before the kidnapping. The January 31st morning request suggests a suspicious vehicle was in the area hours before Tommaso picked Nancy up for dinner. This was planned. This was methodical. And this was personal. Let me talk about Tommaso Cyan. Tommaso Cyan. 50 years old. Born June 18, 1975 in San Giovanni Valdarno, Tuscany, Italy. Married to Nancy's oldest daughter Annie since September 2006. They have one son. He's a teacher. 6th grade and AP Biology at Basis Oro Valley School in Tucson. He was the last known person to see Nancy alive. He dropped her off at 9:48 p.m. on January 31st. That's confirmed. The FBI searched Tommaso and Annie's home on February 4th. They came back on February 8th. A vehicle was towed from their property. Law enforcement was observed at the residence with bright flashes visible inside. Likely forensic photography. Annie's car was reportedly impounded. Annie privatized or deleted Facebook photos featuring Tommaso around February 8th. Tommaso has not been seen publicly for over a week as of February 9th. And critically, Tommaso did not appear in any of the family's public video appeals. But here's what's also confirmed. Tommaso Cyan has not been named a suspect. He has not been named a person of interest. He has not been charged with any crime. The Pima County Sheriff's Department has stated repeatedly, quote, "At this point, investigators have not identified a suspect or person of interest in this case." Sheriff Nanos said, quote, "No one has been ruled out, but confirmed no suspects were identified." News Nation journalist Ashley Banfield claimed on her podcast February 3rd through 4th that a, quote, highly regarded law enforcement source told her Tommaso, quote, may be the prime suspect. TMZ and entertainment outlets amplified this. But not one official law enforcement agency has corroborated that claim. Not the FBI. Not the Pima County Sheriff. Nobody. Multiple observers have pointed out that Tommaso Cyan appears significantly taller than the 5'9" to 5'10" suspect captured on camera. If that's accurate, he's not the person who physically tore down that camera and stood at Nancy's door. But does that mean he wasn't involved in planning? No. It just means we don't have evidence he was the masked figure. Online sleuths have also fixated on Dominic Evans, the drummer in Tommaso's Tucson-based band Early Black. Why? Physical resemblance to the masked figure. Reported criminal history, including felony charges. But Dominic Evans has not been named by any law enforcement agency. Not as a suspect. Not as a person of interest. This is entirely social media speculation. The only other person detained in this case is Carlos Palos, a delivery driver from Rio Rico, about 60 miles south of Tucson, near the Mexican border. He was pulled over during a traffic stop on February 10th, hours after the FBI released the doorbell footage. His home was searched. He was questioned for approximately 8 hours. Then he was released without charges. He told reporters he'd never even heard of Nancy Guthrie. Law enforcement has effectively ruled him out. 13 days in, and we have a masked suspect on camera. Evidence of meticulous planning. A victim who desperately needs medical intervention. And 0 arrests in the actual kidnapping. Then there's the ransom notes. Multiple ransom communications surfaced. None authenticated. None confirmed as coming from the actual kidnapper. Around February 2nd or 3rd, emails were sent to TMZ and 2 Tucson TV stations, KWLD and KGUN. The demand? $6 million in Bitcoin to a specific wallet address. Deadline 5 p.m. February 5th. That deadline passed. A second deadline was set for February 9th. That deadline passed too. No confirmed contact. No proof of life. Nothing. February 5th, TMZ's Harvey Levin reported receiving a letter claiming Nancy is alive and scared. Authenticity unknown. Law enforcement hasn't verified it. February 11th, TMZ received a third note. Someone claiming to know the kidnapper's identity demanded 1 Bitcoin, roughly $66,000 to $70,000, to a different wallet address. February 12th, the same person sent a follow-up. I am not being taken seriously. A retired FBI agent analyzed the original ransom note and noticed something odd. It used the abbreviation USD. An American would almost never write that. We just say dollars. The use of USD suggests either a foreign author or someone trying to make it look like a foreign author. Nancy's family confirmed at least 1 Bitcoin transaction was made to the original ransom wallet address around 5 p.m. on February 11th. Who made it? Was it the family? Was it someone else? We don't know. As of February 9th, the FBI stated it was, quote, not aware of any continued communication between the Guthrie family and suspected kidnappers. One person has been arrested for ransom fraud. Derek Kella, 42 years old. Hawthorne, California. On February 4th, the same day the Guthrie family released their first public video plea, Derek Kella sent fake ransom texts to Annie Guthrie and Tommaso. The text read, quote, "Did you get the Bitcoin? We're waiting on our end for the transaction." Authorities traced the VoIP line back to his Gmail account and home address. When questioned, Kella admitted he'd been, quote, following along and watching TV and, quote, pulled family information from a cyber website. He wasn't involved in the kidnapping. He had no information. He was just a parasite. He was charged with transmitting a demand for ransom in interstate commerce and misuse of a telecommunications device. Federal charges. He appeared in court in Santa Ana on February 6th, then in Tucson on February 13th. He was released before trial on $20,000 bond with device monitoring and travel restrictions. The FBI called him a, quote, grief profiteer. This isn't even his first crime. In October 2025, the Los Angeles County DA named Kella among 13 county employees charged with stealing over $430,000 in unemployment benefits. Derek Kella is not a suspect in Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. He's just proof that when tragedy strikes, the vultures come circling. If this is getting to you, smash that like button right now and drop a comment. Let me know what you think happened. Savannah Guthrie stepped away from the Today Show. She canceled her co-hosting duties for the 2026 Winter Olympics opening ceremonies. She put her entire career on hold. On February 4th, flanked by her siblings Annie and Cameron, She looked into a camera and spoke directly to whoever took her mother. Quote, "She is a kind, faithful, loyal, fiercely loving woman. We are begging whoever has her to please reach out." 3 days later, February 7th, the tone had changed. Quote, "We received your message and we understand. We beg you now to return our mother to us. This is very valuable to us and we will pay." February 9th, Savannah alone. Quote, "This is our hour of desperation." February 10th, she shared the FBI doorbell footage. Someone out there recognizes this person. February 12th, a home movie montage. Nancy smiling. Nancy laughing. Savannah's caption, "Our lovely mom. We will never give up on her." The family publicly maintains Nancy is still alive. They've expressed willingness to pay ransom. But there's been no proof of life. No verified contact. President Trump called Savannah on February 4th, offering additional federal resources. The White House posted about the case on social media. FBI Director Kash Patel appeared on Fox News claiming, quote, "substantial progress," and saying there are, quote, "multiple persons of interest." But when pressed for details, he gave none. The community has rallied. Over 400 to 500 people attended a candlelight vigil at St. Philip's in the Hills Episcopal Church on February 4th. Neighbors left flowers and notes at Nancy's home. Yellow ribbons appeared across Catalina foothills. 13 days in, whoever did this is still out there. And every hour that passes makes it less likely Nancy Guthrie will be found alive. When the most powerful law enforcement agency in the world collides with small-town sheriff politics, everything falls apart. The FBI didn't just get involved in the Nancy Guthrie case. They took it over. Hundreds of agents. A 24-hour command post. Crisis management specialists flown in from Quantico. Digital forensics teams working directly with Google to extract data that wasn't supposed to exist. Video analysis units recreating crime scene conditions in a blackout tent. Behavioral analysts profiling the suspect. Linguists examining ransom note syntax. The full weight of the federal government. And it's being blocked by a local sheriff who won't hand over the evidence. February 12th, Reuters broke the story. Sheriff Chris Nanos is refusing to let the FBI process critical physical evidence at Quantico. Specifically, the glove recovered 1.5 miles from Nancy's home and DNA samples collected from the crime scene. The FBI wants it sent to their National Crime Lab in Quantico, Virginia, the best forensic lab in the world. Nanos says no. He wants it sent to DNA Labs International, a private lab in Fort Myers, Florida, under contract with Pima County at a reported cost of around $200,000. Why? Nanos says he wants all evidence sent to the same lab for consistency. The FBI says that's absurd. Quote, from an unnamed federal official to Reuters, it risks further slowing a case that grows more urgent by the minute. This isn't just bureaucratic squabbling. This is a jurisdictional power struggle that could cost Nancy Guthrie her life. Pima County Sheriff retains primary jurisdiction. The FBI can only participate at the invitation of local officials. If Nanos says no, the FBI has to comply. And Nanos is saying no. Former federal prosecutors and FBI agents have gone public slamming this decision. Megyn Kelly devoted a segment to it. Nancy Grace called it, quote, unconscionable. The argument is simple. Why would you not use the best lab in the country when a woman's life is on the line? And the answer, according to critics, is ego. Sheriff Nanos doesn't want to be overshadowed by the feds. Nanos denies all of this. He says he's not blocking the FBI. He says he's ensuring consistency. But the optics are terrible, especially because this isn't the first misstep. Early in the investigation, the sheriff's department released Nancy's home back to the family before completing their forensic work. Then they had to go back, re-enter the scene, collect additional evidence. That's not how you run a crime scene. That's contamination. Meanwhile, the FBI is doing everything it can within the constraints. The reward started at $50,000. By February 12th, it's doubled to $100,000. FBI digital billboards with Nancy's photo and the suspect description are running in Los Angeles, Phoenix, Dallas, Fort Worth, and Albuquerque. Agents are canvassing neighborhoods, going door to door, requesting surveillance footage, following up on 18,000 tips. The evidence they've collected is starting to paint a picture. The FBI's Video Forensic Analysis Unit didn't just enhance the existing footage. They conducted a full scene reconstruction. They went to Nancy's home at night. set up a blackout tent to eliminate ambient light, recreated the exact conditions the camera recorded under. They brought in mannequins wearing clothing matching the suspect's description. They tested different heights, different builds, different backpack sizes. They measured the proportions of the figure relative to known objects in the frame, the door frame, the porch railing, the planter. From that, they generated the suspect description. Male 5'9" to 5'10". Average build. Black Ozark Trail Hiker Pack. 25-liter capacity. But here's what they also determined. The suspect's behavior is not professional. Multiple former FBI agents who reviewed the footage independently came to the same conclusion. This is not someone who's done this before. The way the suspect reaches for the camera, tries to cover it with one hand, then grabs a plant, then rips the whole thing down. That's reactive. That's improvised. A professional would have disabled the camera from a distance or never approached the front door at all. A professional would have cut power to the house. A professional would have known about backup cloud systems. This person didn't. But that doesn't mean they're stupid. It means they're amateur. And amateur criminals make mistakes, which means there's evidence out there. The question is whether investigators can find it before it's too late. The gloves are critical. Black gloves recovered about 1.5 miles from the home. If there's DNA on the inside of those gloves, sweat, skin cells, anything, that's a match. That's an identification. That's an arrest. But those gloves are sitting in Sheriff Nanos's evidence locker waiting to be sent to Florida instead of being fast-tracked at Quantico. Every day that passes, degradation happens. Contamination risk increases. There's also the question of the second surveillance camera. The one 4 miles from Nancy's home that captured a figure in a gray hoodie and jeans carrying 2 backpacks at 1:52 a.m. Is that the same person? If so, where were they going? What's in those backpacks? Investigators don't know yet. And then there's the vehicle. The request for surveillance footage from January 31st, 9:30 to 11 a.m. suggests a suspicious vehicle was in Nancy's neighborhood that morning, hours before she was taken. Was someone watching the house? Was someone confirming she was home? Was someone doing a final pre-check before executing the plan that night? The January 11th footage request is even more troubling. That's 3 weeks before the abduction. 9 p.m. to midnight. What happened that night? Was the suspect conducting surveillance? Testing entry points? Timing the neighborhood's patterns? That request tells us law enforcement believes this was planned far in advance. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. This was methodical. This was patient, which suggests a level of obsession. So who has that level of obsession with an 84-year-old woman? In any criminal investigation, you ask 3 questions. Who had means? Who had motive? Who had opportunity? Opportunity. Whoever did this knew Nancy would be home alone on the night of January 31st. They knew Tommaso would drop her off and leave. They knew she'd be isolated. That narrows the suspect pool to people with knowledge of her schedule. Means the suspect needed physical ability to abduct an 84-year-old woman with limited mobility. They needed transportation. They needed a place to take her. They needed tools to disable cameras. They needed a weapon. The doorbell footage shows a holstered firearm. All achievable. Not difficult. But it requires planning. Motive. What's the motive to kidnap Nancy Guthrie? Financial. The ransom notes demand $6 million. If the notes are real, if the kidnapper genuinely believes the family can or will pay that amount, that's motive. But here's the problem. Savannah Guthrie is wealthy. She's a network news anchor. Her estimated salary is in the millions per year. But $6 million in Bitcoin? That's not pocket change. That's liquidating assets. That's taking out loans. Would the family do it? Absolutely. They've said they will. But does the kidnapper actually believe they can deliver that in Bitcoin by an arbitrary deadline? Personal. Did someone have a grudge against Nancy? Against Savannah? Against the family? Was this revenge for some perceived slight? There's no public evidence of that. Nancy was by all accounts a kind, faithful, church-going woman. No one has come forward with stories of conflict. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Psychological. Is this someone obsessed with Savannah? A stalker who targeted her mother to get to her? It's possible. But stalkers usually make themselves known before they act. There's a pattern of escalation. Messages. Appearances. Threats. There's no public record of that here. Custodial. This is the theory no one wants to say out loud. Was this about control of Nancy's estate? Her finances? Her care? Did someone stand to benefit from her incapacity or death? Tommaso had power of attorney over Nancy's finances. That's been confirmed. It's a common arrangement for aging parents. There's nothing inherently suspicious about it. But it does mean Tommaso had access to Nancy's accounts. He had legal authority to make financial decisions on her behalf. And in any investigation, you follow the money. Has Tommaso benefited financially from Nancy's disappearance? We don't know. Has anyone accessed her accounts since she vanished? We don't know. Is there evidence of financial motive? Publicly, no. What we know. Tommaso was the last person to see Nancy. He had access to her home. He had power of attorney over her finances. The FBI has searched his home twice. His vehicle or his wife's vehicle was impounded. He has not appeared in any family public appeals. He has not been seen publicly in over a week. He has not made any statements to the press. What we don't know. Whether he's been formally named a suspect internally by investigators. Whether any evidence collected from his home ties him to the crime. Whether his height matches or excludes him as the masked figure. Whether he had any involvement in planning even if he wasn't physically present. Whether he's cooperating with investigators or invoking his Fifth Amendment rights. What is speculation? That he's the prime suspect. That he's been arrested or is about to be arrested. That the masked figure is him. That he had financial motive to harm Nancy. All of that is unverified speculation. Most of it originating from a single journalist's claim citing an unnamed source that no law enforcement agency has confirmed. If Tommaso Cyan is involved, investigators know it by now. They've had 13 days. They've searched his home twice. They've impounded vehicles. If there was enough evidence to charge him, he'd be in custody. He's not. So either there isn't enough evidence yet, or he's not the suspect. But the internet doesn't care about that nuance. The internet has already convicted him. Social media threads dissect his every public photo. People analyze his height compared to the doorbell suspect. They examine his bandmate Dominic Evans and declare him the accomplice based on physical resemblance. They dig into Tommaso's past, his immigration history, his marriage to Annie, looking for anything suspicious. And they find nothing definitive. Or he did it. We don't know. 13 days in, and the core questions remain unanswered. Is Nancy alive? We don't know. Who took her? We don't know. Why? We don't know. Where is she? We don't know. Nancy has been without her pacemaker since 2:28 a.m. on February 1st. She's been without her heart medication. Sheriff Nanos said it himself. She could die without medical intervention. Every hour that passes decreases the likelihood of survival. Tips are flowing in. 18,000 to local authorities. 13,000 to the FBI. But how many are credible? Investigators have to run down every single one. Because the one tip they ignore could be the one that saves her. A family waits. A daughter begs. A nation watches. And an 84-year-old woman somewhere is running out of time. When your mother vanishes and the entire world is watching, there's nowhere to hide your grief. Savannah Guthrie is 53 years old. Co-anchor of the Today Show since 2012. Before that, legal correspondent. Before that, a lawyer. She's interviewed presidents. Covered Supreme Court decisions. Broken major stories. She spent her entire career asking the questions. Now she's living the nightmare of being the story. On February 4th, 3 days after her mother disappeared, Savannah stepped in front of a camera with her siblings Annie and Cameron. Her face was exhausted. Her voice steady but cracking at the edges. Quote, "She is a kind, faithful, loyal, fiercely loving woman. A beautiful spirit. She volunteers at her church. She never misses service. She is beloved by her family and her community. And we are begging whoever has her to please reach out. Please just tell us she's okay. That's all we want to know. Please." That video went viral. Millions of views. Shared across every platform. For 3 days, nothing happened. No contact. No ransom call. No proof of life. Just silence. February 7th. The family released another video. This one was directed at the kidnapper. Quote, "We received your message and we understand. We know what you want. We beg you now to return our mother to us. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay. Please, we're ready. Just tell us how." Think about what that means. The family is publicly acknowledging they received a ransom demand. They're publicly stating they're willing to meet it. They're doing everything they can to signal to the kidnapper, "We're serious. We're cooperating. Just give her back." Still nothing. February 9th. Savannah posts alone. No siblings this time. Just her. She looks like she hasn't slept in days. Quote, "This is our hour of desperation. If you know anything at all, please come forward. There's a $100,000 reward. No questions asked. Just help us bring her home." February 10th, the FBI releases the doorbell footage. Savannah shares it immediately with one sentence. Someone out there recognizes this person. February 12th, she posts a montage. Home videos of Nancy. Nancy smiling. Nancy laughing. Nancy at family dinners. Nancy at church. Nancy living a full, beautiful life before it was ripped away. Savannah's caption, "Our lovely mom. We will never give up on her." Through all of this, Savannah has suspended her career. She's not on today. She's not at the Winter Olympics. She's not working. She's doing what any daughter would do. She's trying to save her mother. But behind those public pleas, sources close to the family describe frustration. Deep, grinding frustration. Frustration that 13 days in, there are no arrests. Frustration that law enforcement isn't sharing information. Frustration that they're doing everything they can, saying they'll pay, begging for contact, and getting nothing in return. Frustration that the one person who might have answers, Tommaso, isn't talking. Annie Guthrie is caught in an impossible situation. Annie is Nancy's oldest daughter. She's married to Tommaso. They have a son together. And now her husband's home has been searched twice by the FBI. A vehicle has been impounded. He's not appearing in the family videos. He's not making statements. And Annie has to navigate that. Does she stand by her husband? Does she believe he's innocent? Or does she believe her mother's life is in danger because of him? We don't know. Annie hasn't spoken publicly. She hasn't done interviews. She stayed silent. And maybe that's the only choice she has. Because if she defends Tommaso, she looks complicit. If she accuses him, she destroys her marriage and possibly condemns an innocent man. There's no good option. The silence speaks volumes. The absence of Tommaso from the family appeals speaks even louder. Savannah and Cameron are everywhere. They're talking to press. They're posting on social media. They're doing everything they can to keep Nancy's face in front of the public. Tommaso? Nowhere. 3 possibilities. 1. He's innocent and his lawyer has advised him not to speak because anything he says will be twisted. 2. He's guilty and he's staying silent to avoid self-incrimination. 3. He's somewhere in between. He has information, but he's not talking because it implicates him or someone else. We don't know which it is. But his silence is deafening. The extended Guthrie family is dealing with an onslaught of media attention that would break most people. Nancy's other children, her grandchildren, her friends from church. Everyone who knew her is being approached by reporters. Asked for comments. Asked for stories. Asked to speculate. Most are saying no. They're staying quiet. They're protecting Nancy's dignity and their own privacy. But the pressure is enormous. Then there's the public. The true crime community has latched onto this case with intensity that's both helpful and horrifying. Helpful because tips are coming in. People are sharing photos. People are paying attention. Horrifying because the speculation is out of control. Online sleuths have decided Tommaso is guilty and they're not interested in evidence to the contrary. They've compiled photo comparisons. They've analyzed his height. They've dug into his social media history. They found his bandmate Dominic Evans and declared him the accomplice. They've constructed entire theories about financial motive, about domestic problems, about secret gambling debts, none of which are supported by verified evidence. And they're spreading it as fact. Example, there was a viral claim that Tommaso had $50 million in gambling debts to a Mexican casino, completely debunked by multiple fact-checkers as fabricated nonsense. No evidence, no source, nothing. Just a rumor that started on social media and spread because people wanted it to be true. Same thing with claims about power of attorney documents. A document surfaced online that people claimed showed Tommaso had suspicious financial control over Nancy. Legal experts reviewed it and said it's a completely standard real estate transaction document. Nothing suspicious, nothing unusual, but that didn't stop people from sharing it as proof of wrongdoing. This is the problem with internet sleuthing. It's enthusiasm without discipline. It's investigation without ethics. And it destroys lives. If Tommaso Cyan is innocent, if he had nothing to do with this, his life is still ruined. His name is permanently linked to this case. His photo is all over the internet labeled as a suspect, even though he hasn't been charged with anything. That doesn't go away, even if Nancy is found, even if someone else is arrested. Even if Tommaso is completely cleared, this will follow him forever. And if he is guilty? Well, then the internet mob accidentally got it right. But that doesn't make the process less dangerous. Because the next time they might destroy an innocent person. And they won't care. Because to them, it's entertainment. It's a puzzle to solve. It's not a real family in real pain. Savannah knows this. She's a journalist. She understands how media works. She understands how narratives form and how they harden into assumed truth. And she's watching it happen to her own family in real time. She can't control it. She can't stop it. All she can do is keep begging for her mother's life. And the begging is working. Sort of. President Trump called Savannah on February 4th, offered federal resources, posted about the case on Truth Social. Quote, I spoke with Savannah Guthrie and let her know that I am directing all federal law enforcement to be at the family's and local law enforcement's complete disposal immediately. We will find Nancy. February 7th, Trump told reporters aboard Air Force One that he believed there were, quote, very strong clues and predicted, quote, answers coming up fairly soon. Has that proven true? No. 13 days later, still no answers. But the White House involvement is significant. It means resources. It means prioritization. It means this case won't get dropped. FBI Director Kash Patel appeared on Fox News February 10th claiming, quote, substantial progress, and saying there are, quote, multiple persons of interest. But when pressed for details, he gave none. What progress? What persons of interest? He wouldn't say. And that might be smart. You don't reveal details mid-investigation. But it also feels empty. It feels like reassurance without substance. And for a family desperate for answers, empty reassurance is almost worse than no reassurance at all. Because the family doesn't want press conferences. They don't want statements. They don't want promises. They want Nancy. They want her home. They want her safe. And everything else is noise. Savannah said it herself in one of her posts. Quote, I don't care about anything else. I don't care about the why or the who or the how. I just want my mom back. That's it. That's all I want. That's the reality for anyone who's lived through this. When someone you love is taken, nothing else matters. The world keeps turning, but you're frozen. People go to work. They have dinners. They watch TV. They laugh. And you're stuck in this moment where your whole world is waiting. Waiting for a phone call. Waiting for a knock on the door. Waiting for someone to tell you it's over one way or another. Savannah is living that. Annie is living that. Cameron is living that. Nancy's grandchildren are living that. And they're living it in front of the entire world. Every tear. Every plea. Every sleepless night. It's all public. It's all documented. It's all analyzed by strangers who will never understand what it feels like. But they keep doing it. They keep posting. They keep begging. Because what else can they do? And while they wait, the community does what communities do. They bring flowers. They light candles. They pray. Over 400 to 500 people showed up to the vigil at St. Philip's in the Hills Episcopal Church on February 4th. Nancy's church. The place she never missed. The place that knew her as a volunteer. A friend. A faithful member of the congregation. And all those people gathered to pray for her return. It's beautiful. It's a testament to the kind of person Nancy was. But it's also heartbreaking. Because prayers aren't bringing her home. Flowers aren't bringing her home. Candles aren't bringing her home. Only action will. And action requires evidence. And evidence requires investigation. And investigation requires cooperation. And that's where everything is falling apart. Because while the family begs, and the community prays, and the FBI works, Sheriff Chris Nanos is blocking evidence from being processed at the best lab in the country. And every day that evidence sits waiting is another day Nancy Guthrie might be dying. The family is powerless. They've done everything they can. They've offered money. They've made public pleas. They've cooperated with law enforcement. They've shared every detail they have. And still, no contact. No proof of life. No progress they can see. All they can do is wait and hope and beg and pray that whoever took Nancy Guthrie has enough humanity left to let her go. Let me get forensic for a minute. Because the physical evidence in this case tells a story. And if you know how to read it, that story reveals exactly how sophisticated or amateur this kidnapping really was. Start with the blood. Nancy's blood, confirmed by DNA, was found on the front porch and in a trail leading toward the back door. Not pooled. Not sprayed. Trailed. What does that tell us? It tells us she was moving. Either she was walking under her own power while injured, or she was being dragged and bleeding as she moved. The pattern suggests movement from inside the house toward the exterior. That's consistent with her being taken out of the home. But here's what it doesn't tell us. Was she conscious? Was she fighting? Was she compliant because someone had a gun to her head? Blood spatter analysis can reveal a lot. It can tell you the angle of impact, the force applied, the type of weapon used, whether blood was shed from a standing position or on the ground. But in Nancy's case, the blood pattern is relatively simple. It's a trail, droplets leading a path. That suggests she was upright or semi-upright when bleeding occurred. If she'd been dragged unconscious, you'd expect smearing, continuous contact with the ground, transfer patterns where clothing or body parts scraped along surfaces. That's not what investigators found. They found droplets, individual drops. That's consistent with someone walking slowly while bleeding from a wound on the head, face, or upper body. But the amount of blood is limited. This isn't a scene of extreme violence. This isn't a beating. This isn't a stabbing. This is injury, but controlled injury. Maybe she was struck once to subdue her. Maybe she fell during the struggle. Maybe she hit her head when the pacemaker was removed. We don't know. What we know is she was bleeding. She was mobile enough to move from inside to outside. And then she disappeared. The pacemaker is the detail that haunts everyone involved in this case. Nancy's pacemaker was disconnected at 2:28 a.m. on February 1st. The app on her phone lost connection. The device itself was found inside the home, left behind, not carefully removed by a medical professional, forcibly detached. Think about what that means. Pacemakers are implanted under the skin, usually below the collarbone. They're connected to the heart via leads, wires that run through veins directly into the cardiac muscle. To remove a pacemaker safely, you need surgical tools, sterile conditions, anesthesia, medical expertise. To remove one forcibly, you're tearing it out. You're ripping leads from the heart. You're creating massive trauma. The fact that the pacemaker was disconnected but Nancy's blood trail was limited suggests it wasn't physically ripped from her chest. That would cause catastrophic bleeding. She'd be dead within minutes. Instead, the app disconnected. That could mean the device was damaged. Or it could mean the connection to her phone was severed when her phone was taken or destroyed. But investigators found her phone at the scene, so the device itself lost connection. One possibility: the kidnapper turned the pacemaker off or disabled it remotely using medical equipment. Another possibility: they damaged the external components without removing the entire device. A third possibility: they did remove it, and the limited blood we're seeing is from the procedure, not from a struggle. But here's the critical question. Why leave it behind? If you're kidnapping someone and you remove their pacemaker, why not take it with you? Why leave evidence at the scene? Unless the point was to leave evidence. Unless the point was to send a message. Look what I can do. Look how helpless she is. Look how much control I have. That's the behavior of someone who wants recognition. Someone who wants credit. Someone who wants fear. And that profile doesn't match the ransom notes that came later. Ransom is transactional. It's business. You take someone. You demand money. You complete the exchange. You don't leave symbolic evidence behind unless you want to be caught. Or unless you're sending a message to someone specific. Who was the message for? The family? Savannah? Law enforcement? Or was there no message at all, and we're reading intention into chaos? The cameras tell us more. Nancy had a Google Nest doorbell camera and internal security cameras. All were disabled. The doorbell camera was physically removed. The internal cameras were smashed. But here's what's fascinating. The suspect didn't cut power to the house. They didn't disable the Wi-Fi router. They didn't jam signals. They went camera by camera and destroyed them individually. That's amateur. A professional would have cut power from outside. Or better yet, never approached the front door at all. They would have entered from the back, from a blind spot, from a direction the cameras couldn't see. Instead, this suspect walked right up to the front door, stood in front of the camera, and tried to disable it by hand. The FBI's forensic analysis of the doorbell footage is revealing. The suspect tries to cover the camera with their hand first. That doesn't work. The camera's field of view is too wide. So they grab a plant from a nearby planter and try to block the lens. That works partially. Then they rip the entire camera off the wall. That's a progression of problem solving in real time. That's not someone who planned every detail. That's someone improvising under pressure. But they knew the cameras were there. They came prepared to deal with them. They knew where they were located. That requires prior knowledge. That requires surveillance. And that brings us back to the January 11th footage request. 3 weeks before the abduction, something happened at Nancy's home between 9 p.m. and midnight on January 11th that made investigators ask for surveillance footage. What? Possibility 1. The suspect was conducting surveillance that night, walking the perimeter, checking camera angles, timing neighborhood activity. If that's true, there might be footage of them. A car, a person on foot, something. Possibility 2. Someone else reported suspicious activity that night. A neighbor saw something. A car that didn't belong. A person who shouldn't have been there. And investigators are trying to confirm it. Possibility 3. Cell phone data. Tower pings. GPS data. Something that puts a suspect's phone in the area that night. And they're using the footage request to corroborate. We don't know which. But the specificity of the request, 9 p.m. to midnight on January 11th, tells us investigators have a reason to focus on that exact window 3 weeks before the crime. The January 31st morning request is different. 9:30 to 11 a.m. That's the morning of the day Nancy was taken. Hours before Tommaso picked her up for dinner. Why that window? Possibility 1. A suspicious vehicle was in the area. Someone was confirming Nancy was home. Someone was doing a final check before executing the plan that night. Possibility 2. Cell phone data again. Someone's phone pinged in the area during that window, and investigators are trying to find video evidence. Possibility 3. Someone delivered something to the house. A package. A letter. Something that was part of the setup. And investigators are trying to identify the person or vehicle. Again, we don't know. But the pattern is clear. This was planned. This required multiple trips to the area. This required observation. This required patience. And that level of planning makes the amateur execution all the more confusing. How do you plan for 3 weeks, but then fumble with the camera? How do you know the pacemaker is critical, but leave it behind? How do you avoid leaving fingerprints by wearing gloves and a mask, but then drop the gloves 1.5 miles away? Because that's what happened. The gloves found 1.5 miles from Nancy's home are the suspect's gloves. They have to be. The odds of random gloves being dropped in that area on that night are astronomical. Someone wore those gloves during the commission of a crime, then discarded them as they fled. Why discard them? Because they're evidence. They might have Nancy's DNA on them. They might have blood. They might have trace evidence from inside the home. So you take them off. You throw them away. But you throw them away badly. You throw them in a place where they can be found. A professional would have burned them, or buried them, or thrown them in a dumpster that was about to be collected. Instead, they're found on or near a road. Visible. Recoverable. Available for DNA analysis. And that's where everything breaks down. Because those gloves could solve this case. The DNA on the inside of those gloves. If there is any. Sweat from the hands of the person who wore them. That's a match waiting to happen. Run it through CODIS, the FBI's DNA database. See if there's a hit. If the suspect has a criminal record, if they've ever been arrested, if they've ever given a DNA sample for any reason, you'll get a match. That's an identification. That's an arrest. That's a conviction. But the gloves are sitting in an evidence locker in Pima County, waiting to be sent to a private lab in Florida, waiting for Sheriff Chris Nanos to decide when and how to process them. And every day they wait, the case gets colder. Now let me talk about the vehicle. Multiple witnesses reported seeing a suspicious vehicle in Nancy's neighborhood in the days leading up to the abduction. Descriptions vary. Some say a dark sedan. Some say a light-colored SUV. Some say a truck. That lack of consistency suggests either multiple vehicles or witnesses aren't sure what they saw. But investigators are taking it seriously. They've requested footage. They've interviewed neighbors. They're trying to identify a vehicle that was in the area repeatedly. Because if the same vehicle shows up on January 11th, January 31st morning, and the night of the abduction, that's not coincidence. That's surveillance. That's planning. That's your suspect. And vehicles are traceable. License plates. Make and model. Identifying features. If you can get a clear image, you can run the plates. You can find the owner. You can find the suspect. But here's the problem. Home security cameras aren't designed for vehicle identification. They're designed for faces at close range. Doorbell cameras capture the front porch, not the street. You'd need a camera pointed at the road with enough resolution to read a license plate from a distance. Ideally with infrared capability for nighttime recording. Most residential cameras don't have that. So investigators are piecing together fragments. A partial plate here. A color there. A body style from another angle. It's painstaking work, and it might not lead anywhere. Then there's the second sighting. The figure in the gray hoodie and jeans carrying 2 backpacks 4 miles from Nancy's home at 1:52 a.m. 4 miles is too far to walk if you're carrying an 84-year-old woman. So that's not the abduction in progress. That's either before or after. Given the timestamp 1:52 a.m. and the fact that the pacemaker disconnected at 2:28 a.m., this sighting is before the abduction. So who is this person and what's in the backpacks? Possibility 1. This is the suspect moving into position. They parked 4 miles away. They're walking to Nancy's house. The backpacks contain tools, restraints, weapons, whatever they need for the job. One of the backpacks is the Ozark Trail pack visible in the doorbell footage. Possibility 2. This is the suspect after a reconnaissance trip. They've been to Nancy's house before. They're walking back to their vehicle. The backpacks contain surveillance equipment, cameras, recording devices. Possibility 3. This is completely unrelated. Someone out for a late-night walk with hiking gear. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong optics. Investigators are trying to identify this person. They've released the description. They're asking for tips. So far, nothing public. And that's the frustrating pattern in this case. Lots of evidence. Lots of leads. Lots of potential. But nothing definitive. Nothing that closes the loop. Nothing that says, here's your suspect. Here's your proof. Make the arrest. Why? Part of it is the jurisdictional battle. The FBI wants to run the investigation their way. Sheriff Nanos wants to maintain control. And that friction creates delays, creates inefficiencies, creates gaps where evidence should be processed but isn't. Part of it is the nature of the evidence itself. Everything is circumstantial. The blood proves she was injured, not who injured her. The pacemaker proves it was disabled, not by whom. The gloves might have DNA, but only if they're tested. The doorbell footage shows a masked figure, not a face. And part of it is the possibility that the suspect is someone with no criminal record, no DNA in the system, no prior arrests, someone who's never been on law enforcement's radar before. In that case, even perfect DNA evidence from the gloves won't help, unless you have a suspect to compare it to. That's why investigators are focusing on the people closest to Nancy. Because if this is someone she knew, someone with access to her home and her schedule, then you can build a suspect pool. You can start requesting DNA samples. You can start narrowing it down. But if this is a stranger, if this is someone with no connection to Nancy, someone who selected her for reasons we can't understand, then you're looking at a needle in a haystack. And the haystack is the entire population of Tucson and beyond. That's the nightmare scenario. And it's the scenario no one wants to think about. Because if it's a stranger, if it's random, then Nancy is already dead. Stranger abductions of elderly victims for ransom don't end well. The statistics are brutal. The victim is typically killed within hours of the abduction, because keeping them alive is a liability. But if it's someone she knew, then there's a reason to keep her alive. There's a plan. There's something more than just murder. Maybe it's ransom. Maybe it's control. Maybe it's something else entirely. And that's the hope investigators are clinging to. That whoever did this has a reason to keep Nancy alive. At least for now. But hope doesn't solve cases. Evidence does. And the evidence is sitting in a locker waiting. The FBI is also analyzing the ransom notes. Not the fake ones from Derek Kella. The original ones. The emails sent to TMZ and the TV stations. Linguistic analysis can tell you a lot. Word choice, sentence structure, grammar and spelling errors, cultural references. All of it creates a profile of the author. Are they educated? Are they a native English speaker? Are they young or old? Do they have a technical background or a creative one? The use of USD in the ransom note is a tell. As I mentioned, Americans don't typically write USD. We just say dollars. The use of that abbreviation suggests either a foreign national, someone who works in international finance or trade, or someone deliberately trying to appear foreign. The demand for Bitcoin is interesting too. Bitcoin requires technical knowledge. You need to understand how to set up a wallet, how to receive cryptocurrency, how to transfer it without leaving a trace, or at least making it harder to trace. That's not common knowledge for the average person. It suggests the suspect is either tech-savvy or has researched how to receive ransom payments anonymously. But here's the problem with Bitcoin ransom demands. They're traceable. Not easily. Not quickly. But Bitcoin transactions are recorded on a public ledger called the blockchain. Law enforcement has tools to analyze blockchain activity. They can see when money moves. They can see where it goes. They can identify exchange wallets where Bitcoin is converted to cash. And at that point, you have identifying information. Bank accounts, names, addresses. So demanding Bitcoin isn't the perfect crime people think it is. It's better than a wire transfer, yes. It's better than cash dropped in a specific location, yes. But it's not untraceable. And anyone with enough technical knowledge to set up a Bitcoin wallet should know that. Which raises the question, is the ransom demand real? Or is it misdirection? The FBI is also investigating the timing of the ransom notes. They appeared within 24 to 48 hours of the abduction. That's fast. That suggests the kidnapper had the emails ready to go. They knew where to send them. They had a plan for communication. That's preparation. But then the deadlines passed. February 5th came and went. February 9th came and went. And nothing happened. No follow-up. No escalation. No proof of life demanded. No updated instructions. Just silence. That's not typical of ransom cases. Typically, when a deadline passes, the kidnapper increases pressure. They provide proof of harm. They set a new deadline with more urgency. They threaten. They negotiate. They do something to maintain leverage. Instead, silence. Which suggests one of three things. 1. The ransom notes were fake from the beginning. Someone saw an opportunity to extort the family and took it. But they don't actually have Nancy. 2. The ransom notes were real, but the kidnapper got spooked. They saw the FBI involvement. They saw the media coverage. They saw the reward. And they panicked. Now they don't know what to do. 3. The ransom was never the point. The notes were misdirection. The real motive is something else entirely. And that brings us back to motive. If this isn't about money, then what is it about? Control. Someone wanted control over Nancy, over her assets, over her care, over her end-of-life decisions. And kidnapping her is the ultimate expression of that control. Revenge. Someone wanted to hurt Savannah. And the best way to hurt a daughter is to take her mother. Obsession. Someone fixated on Nancy, or on Savannah, or on the family. And this is the culmination of that obsession. Or murder. Someone wanted Nancy dead, but they couldn't just kill her outright. Because that would be too obvious. Too traceable. So they staged a kidnapping to create distance. To create confusion. To create time to dispose of the body and establish an alibi. If it's murder, Nancy's already gone. And the kidnapping is theater. The ransom notes are theater. All of it designed to make law enforcement look in the wrong direction while the real crime, murder, goes unsolved. That's the darkest possibility. And it's the one investigators have to consider. Because 13 days in, with no proof of life, with no credible contact, with no resolution, the likelihood that Nancy Guthrie is still alive drops every hour. Sheriff Nanos hasn't said it publicly. The FBI hasn't said it publicly. But they know. The statistics are brutal. Kidnapping victims who aren't recovered within the first 48 hours are most likely already dead. It's been over 300 hours. But the family hasn't given up. And as long as the family believes she's alive, investigators will keep working as if she is. Because the alternative is unthinkable. And because despite all the failures, all the jurisdictional battles, all the delays, there's still evidence out there. There are still leads to follow. There are still witnesses to interview. There are still surveillance cameras to check. There are still tips coming in. 18,000 tips to local authorities. 13,000 to the FBI. Most will be useless. People who think they saw something but didn't. People with theories but no evidence. People trying to help but getting in the way. But somewhere in those 31,000 tips might be the one that matters. The one that breaks the case open. The one that leads investigators to Nancy. And until they find that tip, until they process that evidence, until they make that connection, the work continues. The FBI agents going door to door. The analysts poring over surveillance footage. The forensic techs waiting for evidence to arrive. The digital specialists tracking Bitcoin wallets. The behavioral analysts building profiles. The canine units searching the desert. The helicopters flying search patterns. The divers checking bodies of water. The cadaver dogs checking abandoned buildings. All of it happening simultaneously. All of it coordinated. All of it aimed at one goal. Find Nancy Guthrie. 13 days. 312 hours. 18,720 minutes. And we still don't know the answer to the most basic question. Where is Nancy Guthrie? But there are other questions. Questions that might lead us to that answer. Questions that investigators are asking. Questions that the family is asking. Questions that anyone following this case should be asking. Let me start with the questions about the suspect. Is the masked figure in the doorbell footage someone Nancy knew? The lack of forced entry suggests either familiarity or deception. Either Nancy opened the door for someone she trusted, or someone gained entry through deception. A utility worker, a delivery person, someone in uniform, someone with a clipboard and an official-looking badge. It's been done before. But if Nancy knew the person, that narrows the suspect pool dramatically. Family, friends, neighbors, caregivers, church members, service workers who'd been to the house before. Anyone with a plausible reason to be at her door at 2 in the morning. Wait, 2 in the morning? There's no plausible reason for anyone to be at an 84-year-old woman's door at 2 in the morning. So if she opened the door, she either knew the person well enough to trust them at that hour, or she was forced to open it. A knock. Mrs. Guthrie, this is the police. We need to talk to you about your daughter. Fear. Urgency. She opens the door. The suspect is inside. Or she never opened the door at all. The suspect had a key. And that brings us back to people with access. Who had a key to Nancy's house? Her children. Annie. Savannah. Cameron. Their spouses. Tommaso. Savannah's husband Mike Feldman. Any other spouses or partners. Possibly close friends. Possibly a cleaning service. Possibly a caregiver. Investigators have presumably asked all of those people to account for their keys. To verify when they last used them. To confirm they still have them. If someone can't produce their key, that's significant. If someone used their key on the night of January 31st, that's more than significant. That's probable cause. But we haven't heard of any arrests. Which means either everyone can account for their keys, or the suspect didn't need a key. Next question. Is the masked figure in the footage the same person who sent the ransom notes? The behavior doesn't match. The masked figure is reactive, improvisational, fumbling with the camera, making decisions in real time. That's not the profile of someone who writes carefully constructed ransom notes with Bitcoin wallet addresses and deadlines. That's someone who acts first and thinks later. But maybe they're different skill sets. Maybe the suspect is good with planning and writing, but bad with physical execution. Or maybe the masked figure is an accomplice. Someone hired or coerced to do the actual abduction, while someone else handles the financial side. That would explain a lot. It would explain the amateur behavior at the door. It would explain the sophisticated ransom demands. It would explain the lack of follow-through if the two parties can't coordinate. But it creates a new problem. Two people means twice the evidence. Twice the chances for mistakes. Twice the likelihood someone talks. Conspiracy cases are easier to crack than solo operations. Because humans are bad at keeping secrets. One person can stay silent. Two people, one of them will eventually crack. Unless one of them is dead. Unless the person who actually did the abduction has been eliminated by the person who planned it. That would explain the silence. That would explain the lack of follow-through on the ransom. The plan was to abduct Nancy. Send the notes. Collect the money. Kill the accomplice. Disappear. But something went wrong. Maybe the abduction went wrong. Maybe Nancy fought back harder than expected. Maybe she's already dead and the plan fell apart before the money could be collected. If that's true, we're looking for two suspects. One who planned it, one who executed it, and possibly one of them is looking for the other. Next question. What about the Bitcoin transaction on February 11th? Someone sent Bitcoin to the wallet address in the original ransom note. Nancy's family confirmed it. The amount wasn't disclosed. Who sent it? Possibility 1. The family. They're willing to pay. They said so publicly. Maybe they made a test payment, or a partial payment, or a full payment, hoping it would result in Nancy's return. Possibility 2. Someone else. A friend. A benefactor. Someone who wanted to help. There's been public discussion of the case. Maybe someone with money decided to pay the ransom anonymously. Possibility 3. The kidnapper themselves. A fake transaction to make the ransom demand seem legitimate. To put pressure on the family. To create the illusion of momentum. Possibility 4. A scammer. Another Derek Kella. Someone who saw the wallet address in media reports and sent a small amount to make it look active. Then tried to claim they were involved. Without knowing the amount, we can't assess which is most likely. A small amount, a few $100s, suggests testing or scamming. A large amount, tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, suggests genuine ransom payment. $6 million? If someone actually paid the full amount, we'd know. That would be major news. But we haven't heard anything, which suggests it's a small amount, which suggests it's probably not the family, which means it's noise. Another dead, and in a case full of them. Next question. Where is Annie Guthrie's voice in all of this? Savannah has been everywhere. Cameron has appeared in the videos. But Annie, Nancy's oldest daughter, the one whose husband is at the center of the investigation? Silent. Why? Maybe she's protecting her husband. Maybe she believes he's innocent, and any public statement she makes will be twisted to make him look guilty. Maybe her lawyer has advised her to say nothing. Or maybe she's cooperating quietly with investigators. Maybe she's providing information. Maybe she's testifying before a grand jury. Maybe she's wearing a wire. If Tommaso is involved, and if Annie knows or suspects it, she might be helping law enforcement build a case. And that would require silence. Or maybe she's just broken. Her mother is missing. Her husband is under suspicion. Her family is torn apart. Her son is watching all of this unfold. Maybe she has nothing left to say that hasn't already been said. Maybe her silence is grief, not strategy. We don't know. But her absence is noted. And in a case where every detail matters, absence is a detail. Next question. Why hasn't there been a press conference with all the family members? Typically, in high-profile missing person cases, the family does a unified press conference. Everyone stands together. They make a statement. They take questions. They project unity and desperation. It's a media strategy. It keeps the case in the headlines. It humanizes the victim. It puts pressure on the suspect. But we haven't seen that here. We've seen videos. Savannah and Cameron together. Savannah alone. But not a formal press conference. Not with Annie. Not with other extended family. Why? Maybe law enforcement advised against it. Maybe they think it would compromise the investigation. Maybe they're worried about questions the family can't or shouldn't answer. Maybe they're worried about cracks in the unified message. Or maybe the family is too fractured to stand together. If there's suspicion about Tommaso and Annie is standing by him and Savannah and Cameron believe he's involved, how do they stand together and project unity? They can't. So instead we get individual appeals, controlled messages, limited exposure, and the absence of a unified family front speaks volumes. Next question. What about Nancy's financial situation? She's not independently wealthy as far as we know. She worked in public relations at a university. She's been retired since 2007. She lives on a pension and Social Security. She owns her home. She's comfortable, but not rich. But Savannah is wealthy. Network anchor salary. Book deals. Speaking fees. Savannah could liquidate assets to pay a ransom if needed. But $6 million? That's substantial even for her. So the question becomes, is $6 million a realistic demand? Or is it deliberately unrealistic? Set so high that it can't be met, which gives the kidnapper an excuse when the plan falls apart. Or is $6 million not about money at all? Is it symbolic? Is it a number chosen to send a message? 6 family members. $6 million. One for each of you. Find the meaning. Or is there no meaning? Is it just a number someone pulled out of the air because it sounds big and round and ransom-like? We don't know. But the amount matters because it tells us about the suspect's knowledge. If they know Savannah's financial situation, if they know what the family can realistically access, then they're close to the family. If they don't know, if they just guessed, then they're not. Next question. What's happening with the investigation that we don't know about? Everything I've covered is public information. Press releases, news reports, family statements, FBI announcements. But criminal investigations don't happen in public. 90% of the work is invisible. There are witnesses being interviewed who haven't been named. There are search warrants being executed that haven't been reported. There's surveillance footage being analyzed that hasn't been released. There are phone records being pulled, financial records being examined, cell tower data being mapped, DNA samples being collected. All of that is happening. It has to be. But it's not public. And it won't be public until there's an arrest or until there's a body. The FBI said there's been substantial progress. What does that mean? Maybe they've identified the suspect, but don't have enough to arrest. Maybe they're building a circumstantial case. Maybe they're waiting for one piece of evidence, one witness statement, one forensic result to complete the puzzle. Or maybe substantial progress is public relations. Maybe it means nothing. Maybe it's designed to reassure the family, pressure the suspect, maintain public confidence. Maybe behind the scenes they're as lost as everyone else. We don't know, and we won't know until the case breaks. Next question. Is Nancy still alive? This is the question that haunts everyone. The family believes she is. They're acting as if she is. They're negotiating. They're pleading. They're hoping. But hope isn't evidence. And the evidence is grim. 13 days without her pacemaker. 13 days without her medication. 84 years old. Limited mobility. Chronic heart conditions. Even if the kidnapper is providing food and water. Even if she's in a temperature-controlled environment. Even if she's not being actively harmed. Her health is failing. The human body can survive a long time without food. Weeks. But medication? That's different. Heart medication is critical. Miss a few doses, and you're in arrhythmia. Miss a week, and you're in heart failure. Miss 2 weeks, and you're dead. Unless the kidnapper has medical knowledge. Unless they know what medication she needs, and they're providing them. Unless they're keeping her alive deliberately. But if they are, why no proof of life? Why no photo? Why no video? Why no audio recording of Nancy saying she's okay? That's standard in kidnapping cases. The family wants proof. The kidnapper provides it. It's how you maintain leverage. It's how you prove the victim is still valuable. The absence of proof of life is the most troubling detail in this entire case. Because it suggests one of two things. Either the kidnapper is incompetent and doesn't understand how ransom negotiations work, or Nancy is already dead and there's no proof of life to provide. Investigators are working both angles. They're searching for her as if she's alive. They're investigating as if she might be dead. They're preparing the family for both outcomes while maintaining hope for the better one. But 13 days in, the odds are not good. Next question. Where do we go from here? This case is at an inflection point. Either something breaks soon or it goes cold. The evidence is there. The leads are there. But time is running out. The FBI needs those gloves analyzed. They need that DNA processed. They need to identify the masked figure. They need to trace the vehicle. They need to interview every person who had access to Nancy's home. They need to follow the Bitcoin. They need to analyze the ransom notes. They need to execute more search warrants. They need to apply pressure. They need to get someone to talk. And they need to do it now. Because every day that passes, evidence degrades. Memories fade. Witnesses forget. The trail goes cold. Sheriff Nanos needs to step aside and let the FBI do their job. Or he needs to start doing his own job faster. Those gloves can't sit in an evidence locker any longer. That DNA can't wait for a private lab in Florida when Quantico is standing by. The family needs to keep pressure on law enforcement. Keep pressure on the media. Keep Nancy's face in front of the public. Keep the reward visible. Keep the tip line active. Don't let this case fade from the headlines. And the public needs to stay vigilant. Someone knows something. Someone saw something. Someone heard something. A neighbor. A coworker. A family member. A friend. Someone noticed a change in behavior. Someone noticed an absence. Someone noticed something off. That person needs to come forward. Anonymously if necessary. Through the tip line. Through Crime Stoppers. Through a lawyer. However they're comfortable. But they need to come forward. Because 13 days in, Nancy Guthrie is still out there. And someone knows where. This case is solvable. The evidence exists. The suspect exists. The answers exist. They just haven't been found yet. But they will be. Because cases like this don't stay unsolved forever. Eventually someone talks. Eventually someone makes a mistake. Eventually the truth comes out. It might be tomorrow. It might be next week. It might be next year. It might be 10 years from now when a deathbed confession is made or a body is accidentally discovered or a piece of evidence that was missed gets re-examined with new technology. But eventually we'll know what happened to Nancy Guthrie. The question is whether we'll know in time to save her or whether we'll know too late. 13 days in, we're still waiting for the answer. Nancy Ellen Guthrie, 84 years old. Mother, grandmother, friend, church volunteer, beloved member of her community. Taken from her home in the middle of the night. Still missing. Still out there somewhere. If you know anything at all, call the FBI. Call the Pima County Sheriff. Call Crime Stoppers. The tip line is open 24 hours a day. The reward is $100,000. No questions asked. And if you're the person who took her, if you're watching this, if you're listening, hear this. It's not too late. You can still do the right thing. You can still let her go. You can still make this right. Because every hour that passes, this gets worse for you. Every hour that passes, more evidence is collected. More witnesses are interviewed. More connections are made. The net is tightening. And eventually it will close. You can wait for that to happen, or you can end this now. Let Nancy Guthrie go home. That's all anyone wants. That's all the family wants. That's all the investigators want. That's all we want. Just let her come home. This is Dark Pulse. This case isn't solved, but it will be. And we'll be here when it is. Until then, Nancy, we're looking for you. We haven't given up. We won't give up. And to everyone watching, keep your eyes open. Stay vigilant. Pay attention. Because the person who can solve this case might be you. If this moved you, hit that like button. Share this everywhere. Drop a comment and tell me your theory. Subscribe to Dark Pulse so you never miss an update on this case. Thank you for watching.